Welcome to Living the Bucket List, where you'll get to meet some extraordinary people with a vision for a crafted life, which I hope inspires you to go after what matters to you. Get out there and live your bucket list. Welcome to Living the Bucket List, and today I've got a very interesting individual with me who I met while I was travelling through the Northwest Territories, far northern Canada, north of the 60th parallel. And Kelvin is a guy who really stands out from the crowd in such an extreme and positive way. He's someone who I've seen over the last couple of years grow online and do so much to help other people with establishing We Matter with his sister and driving positive change in Indigenous youth communities where the real issue is surrounding youth suicide, and there's a lot of need in that area at the moment. What I'd like to give you is a bit of a background on where Kelvin comes from. Kelvin grew up in Hay River, and look, at 15 years old, probably made more waves than most 15-year-olds do, establishing a production company, Crossover Productions, and getting into the world of film and cinematography. 16 years old, was it, Kelvin, when you had your first big hit with Sheep and the Hampton International Film Festival?
Yeah, well, I started it when I was 16, and then it was finished when I was 17, and it went on to a film festival in Long Island, New York. And they brought me in, which was exciting for a teenager from northern Canada to go to.
So tell us a little bit about that. What was the inspiration behind getting involved in the world of cinema?
Well, so I grew up in a small town in, as you mentioned, the far north of Canada. And, there's not a whole lot to do. And it's a long distance from anything, really. And as I always say, there wasn't a lot better to do than make movies. I also had always sort of felt that there was a world that was going on inside my head that I didn't really know how to express. And I'd gone through issues of, bullying and loneliness and isolation. And once I started picking up a video camera, it felt like the world kind of made sense to me, that I could tell stories through this camera and through the power of photography and cinema and stories, could sort of express myself. Felt very empowering. So I started doing it when I was 15, and I'm still doing it today.
So Kelvin, you had a very early rise to success with First Story. Your very first production on First Story, Black Blood was the title. It won you the Jack Webster Award and also the Trina McQueen Award. So tell us a bit about that. How much was there involved in the background on getting ready for those sorts of things and preparing to have your first program go to air?
Sure. So, well, I finished university when I was 23 years old. And, I just, by a bit of luck, I guess, and a bit of hard work of the things that I'd done before university, I got my first job in TV 3 months after I graduated. And it was at First Story, which is it's an Aboriginal current affairs show here in Canada. I would examine important topics, and it'd be a mix. So sometimes it's like a story about an artist and something uplifting. Another time it might be sort of hard news. And in the first month that I was working on the show, I found this really interesting story of these oil spills in northern British Columbia here in Canada that they weren't huge enough to make the news, but they were big, and they had just been sitting not cleaned up on the land for many years. And I convinced my boss that even though I was 23 years old and had just started, that for my first story, I should go travel up to this area, which is expensive, and cover this important story about a lack of timeliness in cleaning up environmental problems. And it was super stressful because I felt like there was a new job, a lot riding on it to want to do a good job. So I really was burning the candle at both ends on that one to try to tell the story effectively. And it felt like, and it's like nobody had told that story specifically. It seemed like in the area, and the First Nations had said that no one had done the story justice. And it took a lot of work to complete the episode, and it aired, it was well received. There was a couple newspaper articles that followed up, and the community themselves, most importantly, felt like that I had done their story justice. So that felt good. And then to find out, a few months later during the awards season that it won, the top journalism award in BC, I was just over the moon. It meant a lot. And what I hope, though, is that it was able to bring attention as well to that story and to what was going on for the people in the area.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting journey since I met you, watching you actually transition from being behind the camera with First Story to actually seeing the first episode that you presented.
Yeah, so I hosted 3 episodes, I think, or no, it was 3 during my last season at work there, which was its own learning curve, because I definitely had more experience working behind the camera than doing a bit of on-camera work. But it's fun.
Yeah, I'm guessing that you don't mind being on both sides of the camera, considering the part that you had in Evangeline.
Evangeline, it's like a local horror film that was filmed here in BC. And there was about 2 or 3 years where I was putting a lot of energy into acting, because it was just exciting to me. When I was in high school, when I was making movies, I would often just put myself in the movie because it was fun. And so I pursued that for a little bit at university and quite enjoyed it. But it's a lot of work to be an actor. And you have to really be determined to succeed. And it wasn't like, in my life goals, it's more important to me to make the feature film than to be in the feature film. So my acting ended up sort of trickling off, but I was able to appear in this local film called Evangeline. The director was a great female director, and it was this really fun experience to go out and try out my acting chops. So right now I'm sort of, there's 2 major things I'm working on. One is just sort of my general filmmaking self and slowly working towards a feature film. But the other project that I have going on right now, one of the big things I'm working on is called We Matter. And it's an organization that I started with my sister, as we are Indigenous. So we're First Nations from Northern Canada. And we've seen a lot of the issues that Indigenous youth face in Canada. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of issues when it comes to suicide in Indigenous communities in Canada. But not only that, there's higher rates of things like depression, of violence, of dropouts, that sort of stuff. And the feeling was that in a lot of these remote communities, or even in cities across Canada, for Indigenous youth, that there is issues when it comes to feeling alone or feeling isolated or feeling depressed or dealing with trauma. And since there isn't always a ton of positive role models visible in the public, in the media, like a lot of the news stories that you might see will be perhaps negative, or when I was a teenager, we didn't often get to see the positive side of Indigenous people like me. So We Matter has a simple idea. It's a multimedia national campaign that people from across the country create short little video messages, 1 or 2 or 3 minutes long, sharing a message of hope directed at Indigenous youth. And in these messages, people will sometimes share some of their own experiences of overcoming, violence or abuse or suicidal thoughts, or even just loneliness or overcoming hard times. Or these people will just simply share a positive shout out saying that they're there for any Indigenous young people who are maybe feeling lost or alone. And we gather all these messages that people share. We have them all on our website at wemattercampaign.org. And also we run various social media platforms that we post videos, link articles to cool things other Indigenous youth are working on. And it's all focused on promoting hope and empowerment for Indigenous young people. It's an entirely positive space, so that if someone's having a hard time and it's 2 a.m. and they live in a small community, or they live in like an inner urban setting, that they can always turn to these videos as something that can help them get through if they might feel like there's nothing else for them in that moment.
So, Kelvin, with your experience in the media and the communities you've been involved with, do you feel that that has played a key part in getting the steam behind We Matter to get it across the line?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because I'd been a journalist for 3 years. I had, told a lot of Indigenous stories. And so when I started working on We Matter, that's I had a lot of connections. I felt so there was enough people I knew in the community that it wasn't starting from scratch and building important relationships. So I think that was really key. And also, really, We Matter is about telling stories. And in the first few videos that we showed or that we filmed the initial ones, and working with people to share their stories and to feel confident about what they're sharing is still me being a director. So was able to use those skills in the building of this. And I do want to add actually as well that's I'm only half of We Matter really, and that's my sister Tunchai has been just so pivotal in constructing and building what this campaign is. And it's been lots of fun actually to work with a family member that's so close to me, because I feel like we have come from the same place, literally, and it's been an honor to be able to work with a family member in this tremendous We Matter journey, which has been exhausting and fulfilling.
Yeah. So, with where you are at the moment, geographically, how far is Tenchai away from you right now?
Well, in general, so Tunchai lives in Ontario, and I live in British Columbia, and it's about 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers probably between the two. Um, but lately, we've been meeting up in different places across the country to do workshops together. But aside from that, because with the phones and the texting and social media, we're always a quick click or a call away, which kind of reduces that space. At this exact moment, she's actually in Cuba.
Oh, a little jealous.
So she's taken a much needed vacation. She had been working quite hard. When we launched, she was also taking a master's program, so she was kind of doing double duty and just really was working herself in. So she's on a much needed beach vacation. I'm taking care of things on the homeland right now for We Matter.
Wow, I just had visions of what you're doing with We Matter spanning more than the immediate communities that you're involved with there and the immediate footprint that you have. And I'm just sitting here with a map of the world behind my computer, and I'm looking at all these different countries and thinking, wow, I can see the We Matter brand, not to say it's actually a brand or a franchise, but the whole concept of We Matter spanning so many other areas. In Australia in particular, we have also a very big issue that we need to face socially in relation to our Indigenous population. The problems that there are and the remoteness of the country are very similar, I suppose, because Canada's massive and Australia's a very large country too. And we're finding that there's so many different obstacles that are presented by the remoteness of a lot of the different communities that are spread across Australia. So could you see We Matter being something that starts to actually cross geographical borders?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, since like within a first month of having launched, there was questions from people in different countries saying, "Hey, like a lot of the same issues are going on here. Do you think that this can branch?" And we definitely think that that can happen. Just for ourselves, we've been so busy just kind of getting the campaign rolling. It's only been functioning for less than 6 months at this point. And we're getting our feet, we're getting our bearings, we're getting a sense of the campaign and the rhythm of it. And as soon as we feel like we have that, then yes, we absolutely would love to branch out. As there has been requests from places like New Zealand, from Australia and the US, where the problems are nearly identical. And you can speak to people from all those countries and even like Brazil and in South America, and have those same feelings of isolation, of loneliness, and overcoming obstacles and trauma. So I think as it spreads, it will continue to get stronger and stronger. And we do hope to continue to help it grow, working with partners in each country once we're able to make those connections.
So can you tell us a bit about the point at which that yourself and your sister decided to actually take action on setting up the We Matter campaign? Where did that all begin?
It was about a year ago that the idea for We Matter kind of started, and it's based on a campaign that already exists that does sort of similar work called the It Gets Better project in the U.S. that was started by an LGBT author and columnist who wanted to be able to speak to teenagers across the US, gay teenagers or LGBT teenagers who might be feeling alone or isolated and they have higher rates of suicide. So he just created a video and he put it on YouTube and recommended friends to do the same. And that campaign had exploded with millions of views, thousands of followers, very successful, and had been around for about 6 years. And about a year ago, there was in the news in Canada, there was this community called Attawapiskat that was going through a suicide crisis, where in a 6-month period, there was, I think it was like 100 or something young people. There was 100 different attempts, suicide attempts. And it's hard to see those headlines because that's, sometimes, you might hear more of the negative than the positive in the news. But we kind of made the connection that we're like, you know what, there's this project in the US called It Gets Better. This idea of just using social media, of using voices from different regions across the country to all come together online, that could easily work for Indigenous people. And so we called the campaign and said, hey, we want to do this. We want to make it available for all Indigenous people in Canada. Does that sound cool? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. The more positivity in the world, the better. And so about a year ago, we began the journey of contacting different organizations who wanted to support. We found a law firm, an accounting firm that offered to help out. And we found an awesome design partner that was willing to build the website for us and a lot of our materials, basically in kind, because they believed in the idea too. And spent the summer trying to build the campaign, find enough basic finances to be able to launch. And we also spent time doing focus groups with Indigenous teenagers. So sitting down with different young people from across the country and being like, hey, does this work for you? What do you think of this idea? How can we make it work? Working towards a launch date in the fall. We ended up finding one of the major Canadian banks stepped in to be one of our founding partner, was able to contribute enough for us to be able to get off the ground, which was so appreciative. As well, we had found different First Nations, like different Indigenous government groups that brought us to their regions so we could talk to the youth, filmed a few initial videos to get the ball rolling. And on October 18th, 2016, the campaign went live. Our website and our Facebook, Twitter were launched, and it went viral, I guess is what a lot of people call it. It reached over 1 million people in a month. The videos had been seen hundreds of thousands of times. At this point, the videos have been seen in the millions, and we continually have engagement on social media. We've traveled to different small communities doing workshops, using the videos as a starting place for discussions on hope and healing in remote communities. And it's been a lot. There's requests that come in quite a bit from different people wanting to be a part of We Matter in some way. There's constantly new videos that are being submitted from chiefs, like national chiefs here in Canada, who have added messages, as well as famous musicians, Indigenous musicians. The Prime Minister of Canada even created a video to send his message of hope to Indigenous youth, as well as so many amazing Indigenous young people who've shared their voices, who have either lost friends or have gone through some of these issues themselves when it comes to depression or suicidal thoughts or addiction. So it's been quite the ride so far.
It sounds like everything has just taken off out of the blocks without any obstacles at all. Picking up over 1 million followers in such a short period of time and having the level of success that you've had. Can you tell us, were there any particular challenges or barriers that you faced in the process, and how did you overcome them?
There were so many obstacles, especially in the lead up phase when we were trying to get the campaign going, because, to host the website, to be able to put the time in to get the website built and to find that the people, it does take dollars. And for a huge, many amount of months, everything to do with the campaign was just going on to my personal credit. So it was tremendously stressful, not knowing for sure if like, you know, before the campaign launched, before the millions of views, that, you know, this would be something that took hold. And so there was a slight leap of faith, I guess, on our part. But, you know, we knew that the problem was so huge, and we felt like us having been through the struggles and like getting through being terrified if we would actually have funders, and nervous if it would take hold. I guess it's just that walking into the unknown because you believe it's the right thing to do. And I guess that's kind of what got us through, is just like keeping a hard head about it and trying not to let the fear take us down, but to just keep pushing through, to say, you know what, we want to launch fall 2016. It seems like the right time, and let's just put this out in the world. And so there was a lot of our family and friends, and my girlfriend, that just carried me through a lot of those scary moments. Yeah, if it wasn't for the support of them, and also our partners, like the law firm and the design firm, who were willing to do so much work, just to get this going. So I guess, you know, teamwork and an attitude to not give up is what helped us get through.
Yeah, I was going to ask in relation to your mindset and any advice that you have for someone who's facing barriers that they may be similar to what you had in relation to their scope and scale. It sounds very much like it was more persistence, determination, clear vision, and as you said, it's that just refusing to quit, focus. What would you like to add to that?
For us, it was focusing on the belief, I guess, that we could actually make a change, that knowing what the problem was and getting, you know, reminders along the way of like speaking to communities and hearing in, you know, like even just my mom's hometown, that it's a village, or it's like a small community of 400 people. You know, community members can count on their hands the amount of young people who had taken their lives in the past 5 years. And just believing that, you know what, that life should not be that way. Like, we should be able to have a world where people are strong, where people are healthy, where people are feeling confident about themselves. And so I guess allowing ourselves to be reminded why it was that we're doing it, while at the same time to not let that be too overpowering or I guess strong. It's I don't know, it's an odd mixture of what thrusts people forward to kind of do things. And for us, and then remembering back to the hard times of, like, you know, summer 2016 leading to the launch, it was this just dogged belief that this was going to make a difference, that this could bring good into the world. And we kept that idea at every step of the way, even if it was exhausting and terrifying.
It can be. It can be very taxing when you've got big goals and big dreams, and having the desire behind that. I'm a big believer in the methodology that Napoleon Hill teaches in Think and Grow Rich, is having that burning desire and having the counsel to be there to support you. As far as reading goes, Kelvin, what are you currently reading at the moment?
The book I'm reading slowly. I don't have too much time to just sit down. I wish I had more time to read. So the book that I'm reading right now is called The Reason You Walk. And it's a memoir by Wab Kinew, who's a First Nations politician and journalist and media personality that is quite renowned in Canada. And he wrote a powerful book that recounts his story of interacting with his father, who is First Nations and had gone through residential school, which was a intensely tough sort of boarding house that nearly all First Nations children were forced to go to when they were young, and, you know, were not allowed to speak their language, were repeatedly abused and hurt, just demeaned. And it's about Wab's story reconnecting with his dad and understanding his dad's hurts so that they can have a positive relationship before the dad passes away. And it's a beautiful story that I think a lot of First Nations people in Canada can relate to, because a lot of us have parents or grandparents that had gone through the residential school system, these rough boarding houses where they were not allowed to be happy, basically.
Okay, and as far as with how far you're through in that at the moment, what's been the most valuable takeaway for you personally?
I think one of the things that is always empowering is when you read stories that you can relate to, that someone has almost been in some of the same footsteps that you're walking through. And it gives you that real sense of community when you identify that there are others who have gone through the same things that you've gone through, or who have the same goals and the dreams and beliefs. Connecting with that, and connecting with the idea that my experiences aren't, I'm not the only one who's gone through what I'm going through, and here are these other people who have gone through problems. Anytime there's that opportunity, I think that that's powerful. I think that's one of the things we want to do with We Matter as well, is just allow people to share their experiences so that others can watch and listen and tune in and be like, oh wow, like that person has been through what I've been through, or that person wants what I want. And that can kind of embolden who you are and give you more confidence to walk out confidently into the world.
For sure, and it's great because you're promoting something from a relatability perspective, and that's what a lot of people I've found really need in their life is an example that's in front of them, that's tangible, that's relatable. With the relatability side of things, I've found that sharing other stories definitely helps to bridge the gap as well. And a lot of what I'm finding that helps other people comes through the books that I'm reading at the moment, and the YouTube videos, the main means of which people use to get their story out there. And there's a book that I'm currently reading called Bounce Forward by a guy called Sam Cawthorne from Tasmania, a very remote part of Australia. In fact, jokingly, a lot of people forget that Tasmania exists. There was once a map of Australia printed where Tasmania hadn't been included, and I don't think that they've ever forgotten that. It was a little bit of a mix-up. Sam's book Bounce Forward is very much about his recovery after a serious car accident where he'd lost, one of his arms, and his leg was basically completely destroyed, and how he was able to rebuild his life after that in small, country town Tasmania, to go on and be one of the most inspirational, actually, I would say, transcendent speakers that I've come across in quite a long time. What books do you find that stand out to you the most as the ones that you consistently recommend, and why?
There's a book called 1491. That's probably one of the books I recommend the most. And it's a fascinating account from a scholarly perspective of looking at the world of the Americas, of what it was actually like the year before Columbus arrived in Central America. And as an Indigenous person, in the textbooks that I was in high school reading over or being taught, you don't get a lot of the strength that existed in the Americas and of my own people. So reading those stories and finding out how populated and how advanced and how just exciting some of the cultures were at that time is exciting to me, because I read that and it feels like, oh wow, we weren't just this kind of like question mark in history. There really was a vibrancy to who our people were, or to who is living here in the Americas. And it always inspires me. And I'll anecdotally talk about some of the stuff that's in the book quite a bit. And I always like recommending that one because it's just a great read, and it's informative, and it can expand people's horizons of their understanding of an entire 2 continents worth of people who in the mainstream haven't really had their fully acknowledged, I guess, some of their strengths and powers. And that really gives me strength.
Yeah, I can recall going back in high school, also doing some independent research. I was always very fascinated by Central American culture, and I was more curious about what did the Central Americas actually look like before the conquistadors arrived. And a lot of that for me has been inspired by seeing what happened in Australia with the Indigenous population when the English arrived, and just seeing how much of our our grassroots learnings that we could have retained as a country and as a nation have been eradicated through the actions of the colonists when they did arrive. Uh, the Aztec structure, the Mayan structure, the Incan, those cultures in particular, were ones that I found out about very early on, largely through Indiana Jones, and just like, wow, there's a part of the world where there's all this amazing stuff and these amazing people. Where they had social structures where there were support systems and networks there for people who couldn't support themselves. So effectively a social support system long before a lot of developed nations, as we call them today, even had anything like that as a concept. Uh, I'm going to look up that 1491 and have a read of that. It sounds absolutely fascinating. With the whole concept of being able to reflect on history and traveling back in time through the stories of others, if you could go back to when you were 20 years old, hypothetically, what lessons do you think would be the most valuable you could give a younger version of yourself?
Um, watch what you eat. That would be the biggest thing I would say. Um, I I'm a celiac right now, which means I'm allergic to gluten, and there's several other foods that I really shouldn't be eating because I have allergies. But I don't think I didn't fully acknowledge that the foods that I was eating was actually absolutely hindering my energy levels and my ability to do some of the things that I wanted to do. So if I could talk to my 20-year-old self, I'd be like, you're a celiac, you should not be eating gluten. 100% scrap it from your diet. You have to religiously avoid it, and your life will be infinity amount of times better.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. There seems to be more and more people who are realizing that that's actually something that they need to deal with in their lives. I remember the first experience I had learning about people who do have a need to avoid gluten because they're celiac. I was in an eastern suburbs part of Melbourne working, stopped to grab some lunch. Walked in and this shop had, I think there might have been a couple of salad rolls, a few other things left, and a few pies. Oh, pie would be really nice. I'll grab one of those pies. And the ladies, asked me for about $8 or $9 Australian, which was just absolutely insane. It was like twice, maybe 2.5 times what a pie would normally cost them. What have you put in this? Is there gold in there? Or she said, oh, no. It's they're gluten-free pies. They're for celiacs. And what the heck is a celiac? What the heck is gluten, let alone gluten-free? So it's been a steep learning curve. Since then, there's been more and more family and friends that I've discovered they're realizing that that's something that they need to take out of their diet to avoid feeling sluggish and lethargic. So yeah, it's
true. And there's some people who right now gluten-free is sort of a fad, and people are just trying it for themselves to see if they feel better. And being celiac is like just this, it's medical basically, where I lose my immune system if I eat it. So I lost a couple years of things I would have liked to do by constantly not feeling great because of the foods that I was eating. And I think a lot of people forget how much power that the food that we eat can really affect the things that we want to do. And just looking at the plate in front of you when you're about to eat and taking care and energy into what that is can radically transform people.
yeah. So when you're traveling back up into areas like in the Northwest Territories around Yellowknife and Hay River, and you're in more remote locations, how do you find that sits with what is available from a lifestyle perspective? Is it an easy thing to work with?
Whenever I go travel to small places, I usually bring all of my food that I need with me for the most part, or I make sure where I stay I can cook for myself, because especially in smaller places, sometimes the only thing available is sort of the kind of greasy diner, or like the deep fried stuff and pizzas and chicken wings and that sort of thing, which in general I think isn't good. But I definitely have to avoid those sorts of things. So I'll bring a lot of my food in, or make sure I can cook anywhere I go, so I can always make my own food.
Yeah, it's smart move. Very, very smart move. Now, we're on the topic of food and dinner at the moment. I really need to know, for people, dead or alive, from any time present, past, if you could have dinner with four individuals, who would they be and why?
Um, Anybody, if I could choose anybody in the world, I would want to sit with my grandma and grandpa on my mom's side. So that's like my indigenous grandparents, and the grandma, and then the mother and father of my grandma. So I guess it'd be my two grandparents and two of my great grandparents, because I would be fascinated to learn what their experiences were like. I never got to meet well, on my mother's side, my grandpa passed away before I was born, and my grandma passed away when I was 3. So I never really got to have a relationship with them. And I feel like that they have been instrumental in just who I am, and the flavor of what makes Kelvin, or what makes me, me. And as well of my grandma's parents, because they lived a life on the land. You know, they were hunting and trapping and living in the Northwest Territories. They passed away from, I think it was the flu in the 20s, and left my grandma was an orphan. And I would just be fascinated to just sit with them and talk about what they've been through and who they are and some of their experiences. Because I feel like they've really reflected into who I am in a way that I currently don't fully understand, but would love to know more what they've been through.
Yeah, it's definitely a different way of living. With what you do know of your family background, what your great grandparents and your grandparents were involved with in the communities they were in, and the way of life that still exists to a degree in some of those regards, living on the land, trapping. What would it be about that that would fascinate you the most?
I guess I would love to see the resilience. Like it's tough to be out in like -40 in the winter, moving around and tracking caribou, and it's the cleverness that you need to have to manage and use what's around you. I would just want to see what that's like, understand more of the culture and the traditions that surround that, the believing, the beliefs and the teachings that kind of go with it. Because I think every perspective has so much value. And once again, in this modern world, that value hadn't, I felt, been fully acknowledged for the power of the way that they could have seen the world, that they did see the world, and how they viewed themselves and culture and their family units and how that was all based. It would be fascinating.
And you said that they were such a forming influence on who you are and the fabric of your life today. When you look back in the future, what is it that you want to see for those whose lives you've touched?
I feel like in so many Indigenous communities, as I mentioned at the top, that there's so many issues of suicide and depression and dropping out and addictions. And, it's those come from the results of people going through trauma, or having hard families, maybe having parents that are drinking or abusing, and and um, young people beginning to internalize that maybe that this is the best, right? That this is their life and what they can hope for. But through We Matter, and even just with myself filmmaking, the notion that we can be in control of our own lives, and we can choose and determine the success that we are able to have. And through having goals and visions and directions of what it is that we want to do, that we truly can shape and push our life in different directions. And in We Matter, it's all about just laying those little bit of seeds in young people who maybe are having those dark moments, that to tell them this isn't who you are, like this isn't the only reality that you'll see. And once you find things that you truly love and believe in, that the the life is full of amazing beauty and surprises, and to just find things you love and follow your passions.
It's great advice. Great advice. So as far as following your passions and finding things you love, tell us about your bucket list. What are the top 5 things on the bucket list for you?
Sure. Well, right now, my top one is to make a feature film. Has been one of my goals since I was 16. I'm still working on it. It's taken a little while, but I fully intend to make a feature film over the next few years. I would like to win an Oscar, so like an Academy Award. That's on my bucket list.
Would that happen to be for the feature film?
Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
Exactly.
Yep.
And if it's not the first one, then maybe it takes to the third or fourth or whatever. But that's same thing. It's been one of my goals since I've been 16. Still working on it, and still plan to continue to work on it. And aside from that, I think there's just bits of traveling that I'd like to do. I would like to visit as many corners of Canada as possible, because it's this huge country and there's a lot of amazing Indigenous people that I could go see, and also just cool cities and stuff. So I'd like to visit every region and province and territory in this country. And around the world, there's still traveling I'd like to do. I'd love to go visit Iceland and bump around there for a bit, as well as Argentina is a place that I'd love to go to. So if I had to pick 5 things, those would be my 5.
That is really rather impressive. Visiting every province and territory in Canada would provide you with such a scope on what your background is, being connected with so many people and being able to immerse yourselves in those communities. That is, I'm jealous, to be honest. I can see some now, knowing as much as you do and being as intimately involved with the local culture and the way of life, are there any synergies that you can see between Canada and Iceland that are attracting you to Iceland, or is it more about the nature and the just another backdrop for the aurora to appear?
I think I like the that sort of feel of a rugged outdoorsiness of Iceland. There's a lot of people that only would want to travel to like beaches and stuff, but the thought of Iceland is just cool to me. It's this little island in the north. It's got, from everything I've heard, a great group of people. There's awesome hot springs. There's lots of mountains. Yes, there's northern lights to be seen. It just seems like a unique place to visit that could offer, some unique things that is maybe a little bit different than some of the beach destinations or hotspots, which there's nothing wrong with. But maybe it's just because I'm from the north that I like the idea of visiting a unique other northern culture that would look and feel totally different.
Yeah, it's one place that's on the bucket list for myself. I'm looking at it and thinking, yeah, it's further north than anywhere else I've been at this point in time. In fact, calculating it, you could drive around the perimeter of Iceland following the coastal routes that they've got there in roughly 26 or 27 hours. So it'd be quite an amazing place to spend 2 or 3 weeks just progressively moving through and getting to explore it. What is it about Argentina that attracts you?
Well, I'm Indigenous to Canada, and I grew up eating a lot of wild meats and spent a lot of time outdoors. When I think of Argentina and the further kind of south area, I imagine these like sort of mountainous, rugged regions with perhaps lots of grassland and lots of fantastic beef and delicious wine. And all of those things are all of my favorite things.
Yeah, beef, wine, peaches. Actually, peaches in Chile, yeah. Well, you got me thinking about the foods again.
Yeah, most of my life revolves around food.
Yeah, well, when there's so many great options out there, particularly when you're going right back into the primary production areas where you can pick the freshest of fruit and vegetables and have some of the nicest crafted wines, cheeses, whatever it is that ticks your boxes, it's hard not to get excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We had a very interesting stay over in South Africa just over Christmas and New Year where we got to try some of the local delicacies. And yeah, I've come away with a new respect for pup which is what they call their version of maize. Or yeah, it's what they've been able to do with it is quite amazing. Yeah. So Kelvin, before we wrap up, for anyone out there who's listening who really would like to connect with We Matter and what's happening in the space that you and your sister have created there, what advice, what resources are there that you can tell us about?
Absolutely. So you can find We Matter on Facebook. If you just search We Matter campaign, you'll find us. And there's so many amazing videos. And also for people who maybe want to help raise up the voices of Indigenous youth, you can like and share and talk about the messages. Social media does have a real power that everybody around the world can be a part of, that by sharing these messages, they can bring uplift. If anybody listening, or if anybody listening knows someone who is actually going through, moments of darkness, that's the website, our website, wemattercampaign.org, has lots of resources that people can turn to. Really anybody could turn to needing an uplift. And we think it's important just to people to know that there are others who care for them. And I guess, really, I think one of the most powerful things anybody can do in life is just to know what they love, to know what they're good at. As it has been discussed in a few We Matter videos, as it has been said here, is each person has a medicine. Each person has a medicine power or something that they're good at, they can bring good to the world. And finding what that is, and finding things just to be passionate about, that you love doing, I think can change worlds. And just having a vision of where you'd like to be is unbelievably powerful.
For sure, Kelvin. There's some very, very valuable advice there. Kelvin, thank you so much for taking some time out of your extremely busy schedule to share with us what you've been doing and a little bit about your personality and your what makes you tick. It's really fascinating getting to learn a bit more about you there.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure, buddy. Absolute pleasure. Look forward to catching up again down the track. And guys, jump online, have a look. We Matter. It's got some absolutely amazing things going on there. If you want to reach out to Kelvin and send him a message, there'll be links on the post. Jump online and just follow them, like what they've got going on, share it with people in your area. This is about affecting change in a positive way and helping individuals who feel that they probably don't really have support where they're currently at. It doesn't matter if it's coming out of another part of the world. The issues are the same, the message is the same, the hope is the same. You've just got to hang on, guys. Kelvin, thank you so much for your time, and we'll wrap it up there and look forward to catching up with you again down the track, buddy.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for this.
Pleasure, mate.
This has been a production by Living the Bucket List. I'm Matthew Carpenter. For more about how you can live your bucket list, hit subscribe and go to www.livingthebucketlist.me.